This is the Pulsebeat. It's said that every inspiration starts with a spark, and we're here to ignite a fire. Join us as we showcase conversations from esteemed experts in a multitude of specialties. You'll find experts discussing topics that stimulate, inspire, and encourage. From the famous and familiar to the lesser known, the Pulsebeat will be your go-to for stirring up a sense of truth and optimism. A podcast that pulses truth with every interview and story, bringing hope into dark places.
Welcome once again to the Pulsebeat podcast. I am Mike Smith, a health fanatic and a former National Basketball Association player, joined by my co-host Keith Clearwater, who is a former professional golfer and still a professional golfer. What do I mean former? He still competes at age 65 and also a health fanatic. And today we're happy to be with you and happy to have joining us one Kevin Rutherford. Kevin Rutherford is a third generation owner and operator of trucks and trucking company and owns a business called Let's Truck, which has to do with all things trucking business and beyond, and destination health, which I'm sure we'll get into, but he is the ultimate resource for trucking businesses. He is a respected speaker, podcaster, and YouTuber with a huge following, and he's all about health and wellness of trucking. And Kevin, even you've driven some million miles yourself, haven't you? That's probably how you got into this.
I have. Every time I hear that introduction, I'm like, wow, that sounds impressive. Who's this guy?
all of 5'5" and dominated the trucking world.
That's right. So I drove. I didn't keep real close track, but it was in excess of 1 million miles, and I did own trucks for almost 30 some years, and then got really busy doing what I do on the radio and with the health thing and business, and got rid of the trucks a while ago. Kind of miss them. So once in a while, I still jump in a 45-foot coach I have, and I take off on a road trip and do my show from the road. And
oh wow,
I just spend a couple months on the road like that.
Tell us how you get started doing what you're doing. And I know my introduction was not sufficient, so tell us, maybe in your own words, what it is you do, and where's the impetus? Where did it start? How'd you get excited about it, and how'd you create this?
Yeah, so we'll go way back, right at the very beginning, and we'll talk about conception. I can remember, believe it or not, I can remember the night I was conceived. I went to the drive-in with my dad, and I came home with my mom.
That's funny.
So that's the beginning of the story. I was third generation in the trucking industry. My grandfather was an owner-operator when, this is not an exaggeration, the seat in the truck was a wooden bench.
What?
And you would measure a trip from the East Coast to the West Coast, which he was doing. He actually worked for one of the moving companies early on, and you would measure a trip from the East Coast to the West Coast in weeks, not hours or days. No interstates, very few truck stops. I don't even know how they did it, really. It's kind of crazy to me. My father started driving a milk truck when he was 14, obviously without a license, and that was all he did his whole life. He drove truck. But my father wanted to be an owner-operator. He wanted to own his own truck, not because he knew anything about business. He didn't, never went to high school. He just loved trucks, and he loved working on them. And so he wanted to own one. The problem was he would work a union job that paid pretty well for drivers back then, and he'd save up enough money to buy an old junk truck, and he'd work on it till it was roadworthy, and then he'd try to go make money with it and almost always fail. It was a tough business, and he'd go back and get a job. And I kind of watched that growing up. And at first I thought, oh, hell no, I don't want to do that. I thought I wanted to be a helicopter pilot. So I went to the Army and flew a bunch and decided that really wasn't what I wanted to do. So I got out, but I didn't have plan B. So after I got out, I thought, well, I know a lot about trucks. I've been around them my whole life. Everybody in my family's involved in trucking. So at 22, I bought a truck and went into business. And I had more energy and ambition than brains. So from the time I was 22 till I was 28, I grew to 11 trucks. Um, and I grew way too fast. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't understand accounting and numbers and business. And I was way in debt, living on credit cards just to get by. And, I was told you're going to have to file bankruptcy. And I thought, well, that doesn't sound right. I created this debt. I should have to fix it. So I sold 9 of the 11 trucks. And by that time, I was in the office. I was, selling freight and running the trucking company. And I had
Right.
to make that hard decision to sell 9 of the 11 trucks. And the way I did it was I kind of self-taught myself accounting. And I set up a system where I could figure out by each individual truck whether they were profitable or not, which is what I should have been doing in the first place. And I realized out of the 11 trucks, only 2 were actually making any money. So I sold the 9 and got rid of those accounts, and I went back to driving myself. And I went back to school and became a tax preparer and a certified financial planner, and learned about business and started reading books about business. And then what I realized was I really didn't want to run a big trucking company. I was having more fun running a very small trucking company and helping other people do it and get better at it. So
Hmm.
that's really kind of what got me started in that field of helping other people, consulting and advising. And for years, well, decades, it was all about business, money, um, fuel mileage and maintenance on trucks. I was very, very specific to trucking, but it was all about business. And if you've been in an American truck stop anytime recently, it's not hard to see that truck drivers are a really, really unhealthy population. I mean, it's obvious, it's visible. Most of them are 250 plus,
For
and
sure.
400-pound truck drivers are not even unusual anymore. That's it's so I knew that, but I didn't do health. And I had an employee, and she had gone through that her whole life. She was always heavy. She wasn't active. She wasn't into sports. And in her 40s, she decided to take up running. And she got healthier and she did the Atkins diet back then and lost weight. And she just kept going. She actually, while she was an employee of ours, she completed the Lake Placid Ironman.
Wow.
Yeah, so I was pretty inspired by that. And then she started putting pressure on me saying we had to help the drivers with health. And my first response was not no, but hell no. That's not what we do. I understand business. We can't get distracted. We do business. Health is such a different world. And she would not let up. She was relentless. She would guilt me into it. And this went on for about a year. And finally, I said, Kim, look, I said, I get it. You're right. But I don't feel qualified to go on the air and talk about this. And she said, but look, you owned a gym. You used to coach wrestling. But I said, yeah, but I don't know about health. And I said, I'm going to do this. I'm going to go read the top 100 books on health. I'm a big reader. I love to read. I can read about 2 or 3 books a week when I put my mind to it, and I do most weeks.
Wow.
And I said, after that, I'll decide if this is something I think I could do. So while I was reading the books, I came across a training program for real whole natural nutrition, and I decided to take that. And then I thought, hey, you know what? This health thing really isn't all that hard. It's all about good food and good nutrition, and I can do this. So while I was reading the books, she actually was the first host of our show, Destination Health. She did it in the beginning. And then as I learned more and more, I started joining her on the show. And then it became an official show when we were on Sirius XM. And it was our Wednesday show, and we've continued it ever since. So now we've been doing the health side of things for about 10 years.
Wow.
And health is now 80% of our business.
You know, Kevin, I love your path because almost every human being goes through the same exact experience. I went to a Tony Robbins seminar, and he started out, and I'm sure you remember him saying this. He started out with the concept that, well, love is maybe high on the hierarchy, and finances,
right,
and work, and all these things. And he said, after about 2 or 3 years of trying to kind of narrow down his values hierarchy, he said, health is 10 times above number 2 as far as the most important thing in life. Once we start really realizing that without it, nothing gets done. And so that path you were on is so cool, because I was on the same path. I had all these other things that I thought, my family and this, and all those things are really important. But if you don't have your health to jump out of bed and get after it and take care of all those things, you are valueless. And so I just love your path. I love what you've started there. This is the voice. For those people that are in the trucking world or actually get on a freeway, they realize that you can't get on the road anymore and not pass thousands of trucks. And you're the voice they're looking to kind of keep their life going and motivate them and push them and help them. So it's a pretty powerful position you're in. And anyhow, I'd love to hear your thought. We want to talk all things health today. And really, you and I have had the ability or opportunity to talk before. I can't wait for them to hear about all the paths and things and that you've learned with all those hundreds of books. It's really interesting, intriguing to me. And I'm excited for that path, because everyone listening should be understanding health should be far and away the number one thing in their life.
Well, here's I said my employee Kim tried everything. She guilted me. She motivated everything she could do. And it actually came down to one quote. She said one quote. And my only response after I heard it was, "You're right. I got to do this." And
what is it?
Well, so here's I was big on business, money, finance, fuel mileage. I'm like, look, I help these guys with a lot of stuff. And she said, "Kevin, I know you do. And that's why this is so important." And then she said the quote, she said, "A healthy human has thousands of wishes. A sick human only has one."
Wow. I'm writing it down.
And that hit me so hard that.
So true.
Yeah. And I thought, wow, how powerful that is. And I took it in a very positive way, that, look, I've helped people with all these things, but if I could help them with their health, then I help them with their entire life.
Wow.
Absolutely. Huh.
So that was the turning point for me. And I thank her every day for pushing me as hard as she did. And, I'm just grateful that she didn't give up, and I love what I'm doing now. I loved what I was doing back then. It's even better now, though.
You read 100 books on health
before
you decided to jump in. Like, I think that's so cool.
Well, you know where I got that from? The whole idea of that. So, he talked about Anthony Robbins. He was a mentor of mine. I went through his Mastery University class when I was in my 20s, maybe early 30s. That was a 2-year program all over the country. Another good friend of mine, he became a good friend of mine, and one of my mentors. Have you ever heard of Larry Winget?
I have not.
You got to go look this guy up. He's retired now, unfortunately. I miss Larry. Larry's a pretty outrageous guy. He used to be a regular on Fox News. He's a 6-time best-selling author. But here was the title of his first book. And I just picked up his book in a bookstore one day because I'm a big reader. And when I saw this title, I thought, how can I not buy that book? The title of his first book was "Shut Up, Stop Whining, and Get a Life." Who has the balls to write a title like that? So I thought, okay, I just got to buy this book. He actually trademarked himself as the world's only irritational speaker.
Instead of motivational, irritational.
Yeah, he just irritates people till they change. But
That's how
he's
I feel with my children.
yeah, he's just kind of an outrageous guy. He's this really kind of hardcore, in your face, everything is your fault, your responsibility kind of thing.
Love that.
And yet he's also, well, he has two sons, and he explains it by saying one of my sons is a member of the Phoenix SWAT team, and he is, and the other son is a fashion designer. And he said, that encompasses my personality. And I thought, okay, that's an odd one. He designs all of his own shirts, and they're loud and outrageous. And he has the biggest boot collection I've ever seen in my life. And he designs most of his own boots.
Wow.
Yeah, but I learned a lot from Larry. And now we got to go back. I went so far down the rabbit hole. What was your question to me?
Well, it was about, I mean,
Oh, the books. The
we
books.
were marveling at the 100 books. You said
Yeah.
200. My follow-up question was going to be like, not only what did you learn? Obviously, you became an expert and realized that health's at the top of the hierarchy list, and you want to push that message. And now you've been doing it for 10 years, at least on your health and wellness. But I want to know what you learned. What did you extract
Yeah.
from books about health and wellness? What's the best workout plan or the best diet or whatever?
What do you tell a 400-pound guy that's
Got
on the road that may be dying? Where do you start?
Got it. I can sum this up pretty quick. But the 100 book thing from Larry, what Larry told me was when Larry would sit down to write a new book, and he wrote 6 books, maybe 7 bestsellers. Before he would start writing his own book, he would read the top 100 books in that category.
That's it.
And when I heard that, I thought, well, that's kind of brilliant. And I'm a big reader. I could read 100 books on a topic. And I started doing that. I started reading, just really focusing on a topic. So I read the first 100 books. I think I hit it in about 7 months. I had given myself a year to do it, and I think I got it done in about 7 months. And then I just haven't really quit. So I still read health books all the time. Yeah, I probably have at least 24 on my Kindle that I haven't gotten to yet. Here's the best way I could sum this up. The human body is so incredibly complex. When we start talking about things like these pathways and the Krebs cycle, and I would read these things and I would just sit there and think, how am I ever going to understand this? And if you try to learn health on your own, we now have access to every bit of information on the planet, but how do you figure out what's right and what isn't if you're starting from scratch? And that was my real challenge. I didn't know who to believe. Were the vegans right? Is this research paper right? You can find a research paper to support anything you want in the field of health.
Right.
It's a total waste of time almost to read some of this research. And it really, for the first 30 books, the more I read, the more confused I got. I was not finding any real clarity at all, and I was getting frustrated. And I don't know what happened. I kept pushing and pushing, and I, started interviewing some of these authors on my show. And I made this breakthrough, and I had a cardiologist on the show with me who's now a good friend of mine. And this thought popped into my head, and I said, Jack, I just thought of something. I said, you and I could sit here and try to explain all these complex things that go on in the human body, and it is just mind-boggling. I said, but in reality, the owner's manual for the human body should be 1 page. It's that simple. And everything I do is based on how we lived as hunter-gatherers. It's what I base everything on. In fact, I will even make the statement, if you wanted to be as healthy as you could possibly be, you'd have to kind of check out of life and go live in the woods again.
Wow.
So what I do now is everything I do is geared towards building a lifestyle that allows us to get as close as possible as that without checking out of society.
I like it. So
So
you got a trucker who's in a truck all day,
yeah,
sitting there, driving along, no exercise, bad food, snack food, junk food from the truck stops. How do you start with these guys to get them where they're on a path that they can even dream about moving in the right direction?
so all three of us, you two especially, I mean, you two both have been engaged in professional sports. I've never been a professional, but I've been really active my whole life in a lot of different sports. Wrestling was my big one, mostly because I'm 5'5". So a lot of other sports aren't all that friendly to short people. But the three of us have been active our whole life. We have that advantage. The thing about taking anybody but a 400-pound truck driver, what is let's talk about the traditional advice that they would be given. First off, they would be told to eat low fat and consume fewer calories than they burn off, right?
Yep.
That would be the advice on how to lose weight. It doesn't work. We know it doesn't work. It actually makes people very sick. And there's no way you're going to get a 400-pound truck driver to go get a gym membership and spend 2 hours a day in the gym. You're not going to get him to spend 20 minutes on a treadmill. One, it's miserable. They're just not going to do it. Here's the good news. I can take a 400-pound truck driver and make him a 200-pound truck driver, and they don't have to do 5 minutes of exercise ever. Weight is not about activity. It's just not. We have been so fooled and lied to about this. I can make a human their ideal human weight, and they can stay a couch potato. Now, I don't recommend it, but I want people to understand that the first step is getting the weight off and becoming metabolically healthy so that when you do start getting active, it's not pure misery. Because nobody wants to go through that. When their joints are inflamed, their muscles are weak, they're overweight, walking around the block is not pleasant. And they're just not going to do it. So my focus is we have got to change what you stuff in your pie hole every day first. And then when they start to become metabolically healthy, we start talking more about activity. I don't talk about exercise. I don't talk about working out. I try to help people to build a lifestyle where the things they enjoy doing make them more active and get them outside.
How do you get the weight off?
So I'll kind of give you the history because this has been a huge progression for me, and I never thought I would get to where I am today. But I'm here now, and I can't imagine what it would take to convince me that there's any better way of doing this. Really, we've tried so many things. I see the results. So when we first started, it was mostly about that hunter-gatherer diet. Now, none of us are positive what the hunter-gatherer diet was. We can make some assumptions. I have a pretty good idea that I know what it was for most cultures now. But we were looking at, as long as you were eating real whole food the way it existed in nature, you're going to lose weight and get healthier. So that still included a lot of plant foods. In fact, some of the people I worked with back then were very, very heavy on the plant foods. And doing that, taking all the processed food out of your diet, eating food that existed in nature, absolutely works. It makes people very healthy. But we found a lot of people that it didn't fix. It wasn't enough, and they weren't losing weight, and they weren't even getting as healthy as we thought they should get. Some did, most did, but I would say a handful, just maybe 30%. So the more research I did, the more I started to realize weight, and that's what we were still focused on. How do we get them to lose more weight? They're still obese. And it turns out weight's all about insulin, all about insulin. If insulin is present, you'll store fat. If insulin isn't present, you'll burn fat as energy. That's why the whole calorie in, calorie out thing just doesn't work. So we started saying, okay, you need to eat in a way that lowers your insulin levels, which is lower carbohydrates spike insulin. Protein can spike insulin in some people, and it can even be a problem. So we had to learn that. Took us a while. So I started moving more and more towards low carb, cutting carbohydrates out, and people started seeing better results. And then we ended up talking, and this was 10 years ago. The first time I heard what a ketogenic diet was, I thought, well, that's insane. That sounds kind of drastic. And I've never been afraid of fat, but I never thought that I could eat a diet that was 90% fat and feel really, really good doing it. And when I first tried it myself, I, at 5'5", I was 185 pounds, and I was overweight, and I when you're an athlete, you look at it and go, oh yeah, well, I'm not really overweight. I just put on a few, but it's all that weightlifting I used to do. Yeah, that's bullshit. I was just getting fat, uh, and I had arthritis since my 20s, and I had joint pain, and I had brain fog, and I had low energy, and all the things we get in our 50s, and they just tell us that's what's going to happen. Well, that's bullshit. So as I started experimenting with these things I was learning, and I started cutting out carbohydrates, I started feeling better. And then I heard about the ketogenic diet, the high fat part of this. And when I went ketogenic the first time, I went from 185 to 139 in about 4 or 5 months. And I was never hungry. It was easy. There was no and I was not working out at all. No exercise was a part of that. And actually, when I got down to 139, I thought, oh, wait a minute, this has got to stop. Uh, that's lighter than I was when I graduated high school. I thought, yeah, that's a little too much. So I actually had to add some carbs back into my diet, and I got it back up around, 150 is where I feel really comfortable. And the only way I want to go above 150 is if I'm working out and adding muscle, which I recommend to everybody. But we got to keto, and at keto, we were probably helping 90% of the people. There was just still this 10% left that they weren't responding to it. Keto's a little harder to explain to people. You got to go through the fat and, what vegetables can you eat, what shouldn't you eat. You got to count carbs and all that. And then the first time I heard about the carnivore diet, I thought, whoa, that sounds kind of extreme. But I had also said that about the keto diet. So I started experimenting with carnivore, and I got to tell you, 24 to 48 hours on pure carnivore, and I'm like a new person. My brain starts functioning much better. My energy levels go through the roof. Weight starts to fall off, even if I don't want it to. There is a problem for me, and this doesn't happen to everybody, but if I go pure carnivore, I perform just like I said, except I will end up, after about 10 days of it, I'll end up with no more than 4 hours of sleep a night, no matter what I do. I just I can't sleep more than about 4 hours in a 24-hour period. And it gets a little uncomfortable, and I don't like it. And so it's almost, I've said it's like running a car engine on nitrous oxide. It runs really great, but you can't do this for very long. Now, I know people who can sustain themselves. I know some people who have eaten carnivore for years, and they do great with it. For me, I've got to add some carbs back into that. So I eat a little bit of white rice, honey, and fruit is where I get my carbs from. I eat very, very few vegetables. And the crazy thing is, I'm a huge gardener. I give away most of what I grow. I do the gardening for the activity.
Well, we're all realizing the value of the whole food of Cardio Miracle, and that value of a really high end supplementation along with a carnivore diet. Tell me how that fits into your diet, and making sure you're getting some of the total nutrients, this foundational nutrient base that I think is important in spite of what you may eliminate.
Yeah, so I'll start off by saying I said health is 80% of our business now, which really what that means is it's 80% of our revenue. And we sell a lot of really, really high quality food products that are easy to take in the truck. So
Yeah.
and now there's a team of us that do it, Lisa, and we scour the market constantly looking for these products. And they're usually small startup companies. When we find them, we bring them into our store and make them available to the drivers so it's nice and convenient. And I am a big, big believer in whole food first. We should be eating our nutrients first. But I also realize no matter how hard I try, no matter how clean my diet is, no matter how nutrient dense my diet is, I have figured out that there are some nutrients we just can't get out of our diet anymore. Our soils have been depleted. And I started realizing minerals were hard to keep up at optimal levels unless I supplemented. Vitamin D, forget it. I can't get anybody's vitamin D levels up high enough without supplementing. And
Well, unless of course you play pickleball 3 hours and golf for 6 hours every day,
if
and then
and
you're
lower,
saturated.
or Southern California or someplace where the sun shines a lot. Yeah, it's tough. So we started supplementing, and we have a supplement supplier for a lot of our supplements. And we're always looking for new products. And Stan, I met Stan at a big health conference in San Diego. I think it was back in 2018. And Stan introduced me to Cardio Miracle. Now, here's the crazy thing. We were working, so we have a supplement provider that, has a whole catalog of supplements. And if I think we need something or if it's useful, we bring it into our store. But there were a couple things they didn't have. And I started looking at some things. And one of the problems we saw, which was we just saw it over and over, is I would take that 400-pound truck driver and make him a 200-pound truck driver, get him off all the prescription medications they were on. They felt fantastic. And they would come to me and say, Kevin, for some reason, my blood pressure just won't come down. And if they register a high blood pressure on a DOT physical, truck drivers have to take a DOT physical every 2 years. If they if they don't pass it, the doctor can say, well, I'm not going to disqualify you, but I'm only going to give you a 1-year card. Now you have to take a physical every year. You can give them a 6-month card. You can give them a 3-month card. And if they get a 3-month card, they have to go back to the doctor every 3 months and get that physical again. So, and blood pressure is one of those markers. And people kept telling me everything is fine. I would have a 2-year card, except my blood pressure keeps showing up high. And I went back and I did the research and I learned about the miracle molecule, nitric oxide. And I'm like, oh, well, look at that. This looks like this should be easy. We just need to produce more nitric oxide and blood pressure will go down and we'll feel better. And so I started doing the research on fermented beets and some of the other nutrients. And I actually developed a product for high blood pressure and to increase nitric oxide.
Pause right there. Pause right there. I
All
have an
right,
emergency call I have to make. It'll take 1 minute, and
got
we'll
it.
catch up right on nitric oxide and what you created.
Got it. All right. So, Mike, what should we talk about till he gets back?
Yeah, what do you want to talk about?
Yeah, I don't want to keep going there.
Tell me, I'm a super healthy 59-year-old, but not from reading 100 books, right? It's just my own kind of trial and error, knowing what works for me. I'm 215 pounds. I played at 225.
Wow.
So I'm thin and I have reduced all the inflammation and stuff like that because I've cut out processed sugar and that. But I need to know more about the carnivore diet.
Here's the best thing I can tell people.
Just eggs and meat?
Just try for 7 days.
Yeah. Is it?
It's not a lifelong commitment, and you'll see results in 7 days. Yeah,
What?
animal products, really.
Okay.
Meat, eggs. I tell people to be careful with dairy. Dairy is an animal product, and it's all natural. The better quality we could get, the better. But we also have to remember, dairy is not a true human food. I tell people, remember, we're going back to hunter-gatherer here. That's how I measure everything. And I tell them we did not hunt down mammals and pull on their tits to get milk. It just didn't happen. We
Yeah.
didn't start consuming dairy products until we started agriculture. So dairy is kind of a mixed bag. Dairy can be very nutritious to the human body, but a lot of people don't react to it well, and you got to get the right quality. And there's so many issues, and it gets complicated. And I like to simplify things. So I tell people in the beginning, don't do dairy. If you're going to do a 7-day carnivore trial, either don't do dairy or be very careful. Don't do a lot of it. If you could skip it completely in the beginning, it would be better. Once you see that the carnivore diet really works well for you and it works well for everybody, then you can start adding in dairy and see how you respond to it.
Mhm.
I consume a decent amount of dairy, some heavy whipping cream. I make my own ice cream because I still love ice cream, but my ice cream is mostly carnivore. My one small batch of ice cream for me has 8 eggs in it. So it's a very carnivore version of ice cream, but I do put dairy in there. I put some heavy cream. So try carnivore for 7 days. And when I say carnivore, the phrase I use is if it has a face, eat it.
It's the opposite of what everyone was telling. Kevin, you were talking about the product you had created with
Yes.
nitric oxide, and that you had talked to Gabe, and that's exactly where you left off. So
Yes.
sorry for the interruption.
If I would have thought about this, I actually have the bottle. Here's where we were in the process. I had the formulation of the product completely done. We chose the bottles, the caps. We were on label design at the time, and I had a prototype of the label and the bottle and everything there. I still have it. And Stan called me and started telling me about Cardio Miracle. And I said, Stan, I know where you're going with this. I said, hold on, just stop. I said, I don't want to hear this because I've already done all the research and I have my product. And I said, we're getting ready to put in our first order. And I said, I've done all the research. You don't have to convince me about nitrate. And nobody knows more about nitric oxide than Stan. And he's really good at sharing it. And I said, Stan, just stop. I said, I get it. I'm convinced. I already have a product. And he said, Kevin, you don't get it. You got to look at our product. And I said, all right, I'll look at it. And as soon as I looked at it, having already done all the research, I thought to myself, my team is going to kill me. This is our first product, our first private label product that we created. They did all the work on it. I do the research, but then I hand everything off to Lisa and the team, and they did everything else. They sourced everything. They put it all together. They're so excited, and I'm thinking to myself, I got to tell them we're not going to do this. And I thought, maybe I'll just do it anyway because our product's going to be good. And I thought to myself, there is no way I'll ever be able to promote this product knowing there's something on the market that's better. So I went to the team and I said, I am really, really sorry, but we're not going forward with our product. We need to contact Cardio Miracle and talk about becoming a wholesaler. And we did. It was just clear to me that the formulation behind that product was absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, the download from God, as John puts it, that it just somehow came together. You had the research and study, as did John, but the little pieces that all came together that make that product is what makes it really unique. And for it to stay in your body for 24 to 36 hours, these truckers need that. It's really unlike beets or anything else you put in your body that stays for about 4 hours. You need something that stays in them for a while. They can't be taking it every 4 hours. So anyhow, Cardio Miracle offers that benefit as well as so many others with fruits, vegetables, a host of things that give them a balance of nutrition while they're getting almost none.
Well, here was another thing, and it was part of my decision on this. People ask me all the time about multivitamins. Yeah, and I'm pretty clear on this. They're junk. Throw them away. And there's two problems. One, they can list all that stuff that's on the label, and it might be in there. There's not going to be much of it, and there's not going to be enough to be clinically effective, and it's going to be the worst, cheapest form. So I tell people, no, just stay away from the whole multivitamin thing. I can work with you. We'll figure out exactly which nutrients you need. You're just going to have to take them all separately. And I know it's a pain in the ass, but that's what we're going to do because it's better. And the reason Cardio Miracle is a drink is because that's the only way you can get enough of these nutrients. You can't pack them into capsules or we'd have to take 30 of them a day. And people don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. So the idea of putting all these nutrients into a drink, and first it was the nitric oxide, then the research on it's the best vitamin D delivery you could get, and vitamin D is number one on the things people should be supplementing. I said that earlier. And then I saw all these other nutrients that I know we don't always get enough of, and I don't like to supplement. So this to me feels more like a food. This feels more like part of my diet. I drink it every day like I eat food and I drink other things. This doesn't feel like a supplement to me. It feels like part of my diet.
I love the simplicity of it, not just the effects of it and how I feel and the transformation of that, but I love the simplicity of it. First of all, the fact that it tastes good is great.
Yeah.
But I wake up every morning getting the kids ready for school. I take them to school. I head to the gym. I have this baby filled 40 ounces of water and 3 scoops of Cardio Miracle. And that's, and I'm not worried about anything else at that point. I'm going to get them to school, get to the gym, get my workout in as while I consume this. Then I'm home. Then I'll think about the next meal. But I love the simplicity of it. And it tastes good. And, usually I'm broadcasting a basketball game in the evening about every other day. So that means I leave home at 4:00 and I won't get home till 11. That's not quite a trucker schedule.
Right.
But again, I'm at the mercy of what food and
Right.
stuff is at the arena that night. So I do make some good options and choose the best things, but I'm taking round 2 of this with me. And if it were 30 pills I had to take, Keith and Kevin, and it was supplements galore, that'd be a pain in the butt. I can just fill this up with water and ice, my scoops, and I'm gone.
Yeah.
And so
I love Kevin's research. Yeah. Oh, I love it. No, Kevin's research, though, that insulin is the problem, and solving that through reduced sugars and carbs is truly the only pathway to getting your weight under control. I just love that. And is that kind of the foundational premise that you began with and then kind of went down the different, the carnivore and,
Once we understood that weight loss itself came down to insulin, one of the easy ways to prove this? Do you know one of the quickest ways to diagnose when somebody becomes a type 1 diabetic?
No.
They lose weight no matter how much they eat. And it doesn't matter what they eat. They could eat Twinkies and they can't gain a pound. They start losing weight because the problem with the type 1 is their body doesn't produce any insulin. And once the body stops producing insulin, you will not be able to gain weight.
Interesting. Huh.
So instead of when doctors diagnose diabetes, there's really strong research that shows on average, they diagnose it 10 years too late. And here's why. Before you're diabetic, when you eat something with carbohydrates, your body releases insulin and it immediately pulls that sugar out of your bloodstream and puts it in the cells where it belongs. You're never going to show high blood sugar when you have a good, strong insulin response. So look, your blood sugar never goes over 140. Your A1C is under 5.5. You're not diabetic. You're not pre-diabetic. You're healthy. And this goes on and on and on for years and years until you become insulin resistant and all of a sudden your blood sugar starts to creep up. Then you get these crazy highs. Then you get these crazy lows on blood sugar because now your body dumps insulin and it goes too far and your blood sugar gets out of control. But that was a 10-year issue. If we would have been measuring insulin instead of blood sugar, we would have figured it out because we would see your body keeps releasing more and more insulin, and that's the only reason your blood sugar isn't climbing. But you can't do that forever. And at some point, you become insulin resistant and your body just can't produce any more insulin. So then what do we do for diabetics? We prescribe them insulin. That would be like me walking around the streets of Portland going, hey, look, that fentanyl addict doesn't look so good. Let me give him some more fentanyl. And guess what? He feels great after I give it to him, right?
Oh, wow.
So tell me the psychological part that you have to build or develop on these truckers to get them to feel it's important to start. How do you get them to want to buy into this and make this important? Because that's a big deal. That's a hard place to get people to, and to get them committed and to get them on a journey that's going to lead to something that can change their life.
You might be surprised at what my answer is and why I've been successful at this. Because this is a hard group to reach. It's where do you go to find truck drivers? They're in their trucks all the time. Yeah. They're not an easy group to get to. And that's been one of the things our company's been known for forever. We have access to the truck drivers. They listen to us. They always have. Well, it used to be business and finance and retirement accounts and fuel mileage. They listen to us. We have access, and that's unusual. It's not easy to get. But what really did it, I didn't understand this for a while till I started thinking about it. What got it is the pure repetition. I'm on the air every day, 3 hours a day, 5 days a week, and I talk about it a lot. So it's just hearing it over and over and over. But then I think what really did it, what we call social proof. Drivers would call back and go, oh my God, you told me to cut out grains and 48 hours later, my joint pain is gone. I've had it my whole life. So people would call back and report that what I was telling them worked. And how many times have we been told how to be healthy and none of it ever works? Oh, right. Do this to lose weight. Well, yeah, it works, but I can't do this the rest of my life. And as soon as I stop doing it, I get fat again. So I think it was the pure repetition that I was on every day, and then the social proof that this was really working. People would call me and say they had been diabetic for 25 years, and now they're off all their medications, and they're healthy. And enough people kept hearing that, and then they would try it, and if you try it, it works.
Fascinating. Can I tell you a funny trucking story?
Of course. Love funny trucking stories.
I grew up in California and played basketball at Brigham Young University. So that's Provo, Utah. That's 12 hours one way from where I lived in Los Angeles to Provo. My father, still alive, 90 years old, bless his heart, was a traveling salesman. And he worked it out that his territory was Las Vegas and Hawaii. So he would combine his Las Vegas trips and he would just keep driving and come see all of my basketball games in Utah. Oh, nice. He never flew.
Yeah.
And so if you can imagine, in a college basketball year, you have 30 games, maybe 18 of those are at home and 12 away. Well, he was at every one of my games. And he'd come in on a Thursday. He'd drive there the whole way. Thursday, watch the game, stay at my sister's house Friday, watch my game Saturday night, and turn around, drive home Sunday. And then if the next week we had Thursday, Saturday home games, he did it again. But, the likelihood was the next week there wasn't a game at home. And so he might have missed a road game. But that was his thing. My dad bought a CB radio and became conversant and fluent in trucking language.
Wow.
And he became friendly with all the truckers on his path. And so he's kind of an entertainer by nature and a salesman. And he knew the codes, he knew the lingo,
right.
He knew how to drive like they did. he knew how to flick his lights when he passed them, you know, and
Yep.
to recognize their flick of the lights. And he, bless his heart, for coming to all my games, because I love him to death for being my dad, but I love him for being there. He took photos, pictures of every game I ever played. So I have this unbelievable montage of my whole college career, which is so fun to go back and relive. But he taught all of us 5 kids how to drive long distance as well,
Right.
because he learned it from, you know, the Kevin Rutherford of the world and the guys that you deal with. He taught me the ins and outs, the do's and don'ts of long distance driving, when to pass, when not to pass, you know, to pass on the left, to give them a signal you were going to pass. And he was doing it all through his CB radio, but he taught us the ins and outs. Now I've become like not only a really good long distance driver, but I become certifiably annoyed with people on the road who don't know how to do that.
Oh, well, yeah, that makes you an official truck driver then.
Well, I've never been in one of those big rigs, and at 6'10", I don't know how I would fit, and don't know how my body would hold up. But maybe if I'm on the carnivore diet and my cardio miracle and staying active, I'd be okay. But
That's
I
right.
guess I say that in a long way, not just to tell you I appreciate and love my dad, but I thought it was super cool as a kid growing up and then becoming a teenager and an adult that my dad embraced that culture that he
Yeah.
knew nothing about, because he was with them constantly, and then transferred to us some learning and some knowledge so that we would have, you know, that ability to drive on the roads. And for what it's worth, it's kind of a fun fact, but
No, I love that story.
I take pride in knowing a little bit more about how they drive than most people, and I have a greater respect for the profession.
I love that. Yeah.
Well,
It's a great story.
Not really a question in there, Keith.
well, no, I'm just going to say, Kevin, next week I'm playing golf with the owner of all those truck stops up and down I-15. And we had talked, if you remember, about getting product placement with Cardio Miracle for the truck drivers and maybe get a deal going for them that they could have easy access, pick it up while they're on the road. Anyhow, so I'll have more information for you shortly, maybe when we're back on your show and talking about it, that we can maybe open up something that could be significant. And we would do it through you as the ambassador and get that place for you. So I would like to kind of let you be the voice, maybe even have your picture on it. Let's truck Cardio Miracle and create something, and it might turn into something substantial if he happens to have the control, not leased out that portion of his stores. I think he has some control over them. So we'll find out.
Yeah, so I'll tell you where we are on this. So I had this idea a long time ago. Well, when I first got into the nutrition side of things, of almost a kiosk kind of, or an area with multiple products. I said one of the things we do is we go out and vet these products. We find them, we vet them, we make sure the ingredients are what they say they are. We look at their sourcing. We have a whole list of criteria, and it's pretty darn strict. I mean, it takes quite a bit for us to find a product. Lisa goes to a big natural food show every year. I think it's the biggest in the world, and spends a lot of time, and might come home from that show, we hope, for 2 or 3 new products. So it's really hard for us to find these products. And this idea was, why don't we put these in a special area in truck stops? And kind of the same thing. It would be endorsed by us. Everybody would know that this meets our quality standards. And
Yeah.
I found out pretty quick that is a tough sell, because the truck stops where I had some connections, they don't manage their own C stores. It's a distributor that does it, and shelf space is at a premium. And I'm competing with the big name brand stuff, Reese's and all the candy and all the garbage you see in a C store. And that's what makes them money. And when you have a quality product like Cardio Miracle, it's not a cheap product. It's just not. We know that that's one of the things you have to overcome on good food and good supplements is sticker shock. We are so used to being fed the cheapest possible food anybody can produce, and then we think it's too expensive.
Yeah.
But when you start looking at the really high quality food that we should be eating, and you look at it and go, I'm just not sure I can justify that cost. So when I go to these distributors, they look at some of my, the products, and they're going, oh yeah, that's just not going to pencil out.
Yeah. Well, I can see, I'm sorry, we're going to solve this because I can see Let's Truck, a big kiosk, when they
Yeah.
come the doors for the truckers. It's usually the rear entrance. I know 4 or 5 of his stores, and they could come right in, see Let's Truck. These are all our,
Right.
whatever approved supplements. They could grab them. They get maybe a discount that you offer. I think it could be a great way. 2 things. One, John, who's the owner, John Hewlett, saving the hearts of mankind. It's a real thing. And
Yeah.
he really wants to save people. And these people that are coming in need it. So you're doing 2 things. You're offering them something maybe at a little discount, and you're also changing lives for the better. So I think it's a worthy push, a worthy work to try to solve this. And it would benefit, your reach with people. Let's Truck, getting your name exposure in every truck stop, at least that we have access to, and get that start. I'm gonna solve it. I'm gonna find out and get that solved for all of us. I think it's worth, pushing.
Well, Keith, when you put your mind to something, it makes me feel really good. And I'll tell you something else. I just thought about something. Like I said, I had this idea a decade ago. This isn't even new, and I attempted it a couple times. Not a lot, because we got a lot going on, but kind of ran into some roadblocks. And I thought, all right, we're just not ready for that yet. It's interesting. Not only do you now have this connection that you're going to go golf with, I just got in late last night from a road trip. I was in Nashville for a week, and I was at a trucking conference. And I ran into, have you ever heard of the world's largest truck stop? Do you know where it is, by the way? The
Nope.
world's largest truck stop? I think it's in Iowa, of all places.
Yeah.
Yeah. Called Iowa 80, because it's on Interstate 80 in the middle of Iowa. And it's famous. I mean, it's been on all the travel shows, and they have a big, the Iowa 80 Jamboree has been going on for years in the summer. And I was at this conference, and I met somebody from Iowa 80. Now, the interesting thing about that, they control much of their own property in their own store, and we already have a product in their store. Now, it's not a food product or a supplement, it's a trucking product. It's a little fuel mileage calculator that I designed. But we do sell a product at Iowa 80. And I met this guy, and I said, hey, we've got a product in your catalog. And he said, if you ever want to talk about anything else, just let me know. And I left it at that. So I'm going to reach out to him as well and run some of this by him and see if we could get this idea maybe kicked off at Iowa 80.
Oh, that'd be fantastic. All these little things are just first steps, but I think it can happen. And I think I'm dumb enough to believe that, I don't want to say righteous, but good causes end up winning out over time. And this is something good. And I think if you pursue it, good pushes through over time. And you've just got to believe that. Truth will win, and you just stay with it. And, to get this to the truckers could be industry changing and life sustaining for a lot of these guys. So it's worth the work.
I agree. So since we've been on health, anything else you guys want to talk about health wise? I mean, I could talk about health all day. I mean,
Gosh.
yeah, whatever you got, throw it at me. I love
Okay,
it.
so if you're doing everything right and you're dragging a little and you need some energy and you're doing your cardio miracle and you're still maybe a little tired at the midday point or end of the day and you need to push through, what do you do to overcome lack of energy or motivation? And I think cardio miracles are a big step. Is there anything else you would do? Drink more water? What's your answer?
One of the beauties of Cardio Miracle itself, Mike, you just mentioned you do a 40-ounce tumbler in the morning, and many times you do another 40-ounce. If you are doing two 40-ounce tumblers of Cardio Miracle, you have no problems with hydration. That is so much more water than most people ever get. Because I know the same thing. I have always had trouble staying hydrated because the way you have to do it, you can't just wait till you're thirsty and then chug, 16 ounces of water. It just doesn't work.
Right.
You need to be sipping water all day long, but I hate that. I never think about it. I'm too busy. Cardio solved that for me. Cardio Miracle.
I love it.
Because I do the same thing. Once I'm done with have you guys ever heard of bulletproof coffee?
I only heard about it on a YouTube video of yours. I don't
Okay.
know what it is, but yeah. But like I was, kind of doing a little research, and there's a YouTube video with you in bulletproof coffee. So that's the first time I ever heard of it. Tell us.
Yeah. So now we refer to it as NDK coffee. I give full credit to Bulletproof, which was Dave Asprey. Dave Asprey started the company. I actually tried Bulletproof coffee before I was interested in the health side of things. I actually used it as what they call a nootropic, something like a supplement that helps our brain. They refer to as nootropics.
Yeah.
And Dave Asprey was an executive coach, an executive performance coach. And he was promoting Bulletproof coffee originally, not for weight loss or ketogenic or anything. It was about brain power. And I tried it and I'm like, wow. So now we refer to it as NDK coffee, nutrient dense keto, which is a diet we developed. And the coffee is a big part of it. So we use butter, and then you can use coconut oil, but we use something that is a derivative of coconut oil. So the quick coconut oil has 4 fats in it, and we identify them by the number of bonds in the fat. I don't want to get too deep, but it's C6, C8, C10, and C12. So 6 has the fewest bonds. And in order to digest it, you have to break the bonds. So the fewer bonds, you don't actually digest C6. It goes straight to your liver and gets turned into ketones, which is what we want when you're on a ketogenic diet. And it's one of the only foods that can do that. Fat can do it, but it's somewhat limited, and this very specific fat does it fast and consistently. The problem with C6 is it tastes awful. Nobody's going to consume it. It's that bad. So then we move up to C8. Okay. It still breaks down really easy, goes straight to the liver, does not need to be digested, and converts to ketones quickly. And interestingly enough, C8 has no taste, none whatsoever. It's completely neutral. You can put it in your coffee, doesn't change the taste. So for years, we sold Bulletproof's brand C8, they call it Brain Octane, and it was one of our best sellers. And we got to a point where Bulletproof, the company, was getting so popular, and they picked up Costco and a bunch of other big accounts, and we would place an order and they would tell us, sorry, we can't fill it. Or can you imagine a vendor that you buy things from calling you and saying, sorry, you've ordered too much this month? That's what they were telling us. And so finally I said, look, we got everybody to use this stuff, and now they're mad because we can't get it. Now they're going to go someplace else and buy it. So we actually developed our own. And there's nothing proprietary about it. C8 is pure C8. I can buy it by the truckload. So can everybody else. So we bought it and we bottle it, and we call ours Mind Fuel. It's really the exact same thing. It's organic, regenerative. We source it really well. But when you start your day with, I put 2 tablespoons of butter and 2 tablespoons of Mind Fuel. My first cup of coffee in the morning is about 700 calories, and it's pure fat. And it is, I won't get hungry till 1 or 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and I have energy and my brain works, and I can't imagine starting a day without it. So if you want to do the carnivore diet, it's a great way to start with a cup of nutrient dense coffee in the morning.
Okay, Kevin, here's the big question. RFK, you
Yes.
need to be plugged in to that whole new movement, because what you're talking about are the things he's talking about. And
Absolutely.
somehow the entire world moves from trucking. Every price, Trump needs to know about this. Everything, every grocery price, everything is because of the truckers being healthy, getting it done. You need to plug into that. Have you extended yourself to that administration yet, or to RFK yet?
So kind of, sort of, and this is all happening really fast. And there's actually a connection here with Cardio Miracle. So there are several people who have been officially contacted on the health side of this whole team. One of them that I met at the conference in Salt Lake City is Dr. Sherry Tenpenny. I believe she's being looked at as a spot at NIH, National Institute of Health. I think
Mhm.
so. So that's one connection, and I'm still working on trying to get Sherry on the show with me. We just haven't found time in the schedule yet, so we're working on that. But there's another big one. This is an interesting story too. Um, have you two heard of Casey and Kelly Means?
Yes,
Okay,
absolutely.
so here's how this happened.
My
I
wife's a
review on
follower.
my authors because I read a lot of books. So I found out that Casey Means had this book coming out. We got it early, and I read it, and I was just blown away by it. And I've read a lot of books, so it's getting harder and harder to impress me with a book. But I was so blown away by her credentials. She is a rock star. Her age, what she's accomplished, and then to walk away from all of that
Yeah.
and say, not only am I walking away from it, I am exposing it. I am going to tell everybody how bad this medical system really is. Now, she also has a brother who was a big food insider. I think he worked at Pepsi as an executive at Pepsi. So he came out and said, look, I'm going to expose how bad our food system is. Do you know they were the catalyst that put RFK and Trump together?
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
If you watch the first Trump rally where he announced RFK said that in his first 3 sentences.
Oh, wow.
That was how he got together with Trump, was Casey and Kelly Means. I had her on my show early. I'm glad I did, because I doubt that I would get her on my show had I not already had that contact with her, because she is the biggest ticket everywhere right now.
Oh,
Joe
she
Rogan
sure is.
interviewed her, Tucker interviewed her, everybody does. So
Yeah. That's
yeah,
so exciting. You need to make that. There are pieces here that your positioning is really critical for this country. It's not just, it's a big deal to move all our goods through this world in
yeah.
an efficient way. And you have probably the loudest voice.
Well, there's one more connection. Are you guys familiar with Joel Salatin?
No.
Mm-mm.
So look him up, Joel Salatin. You will love this guy. He is a long, he doesn't even like to use the word libertarian anymore because some of the things that have happened with that party, but he's a freedom loving patriot. He is the grandfather of regenerative agriculture. He was doing this 40 years ago when nobody even knew what the term was. He
Wow.
teaches it all over the world. He's written a ton of really good books on a lot of things. He's very political, hates the USDA and all their bullshit and all the stuff they do. He has been approached to become a part of the USDA, and he's going to be coming up on my show here pretty soon to talk about it.
Fun.
He's been on my show many, many times. Him and I almost had a business venture together. So he was going to help me source. We were going to use some from his farm, and he was going to help me with other sources. And what we needed was a packer. We were going to start packing all grass-fed beef into cans and pouches so drivers could take it in the truck without refrigeration.
Like pressure cans.
Yeah, and I teach drivers how to pressure can at home. That's a big thing for us now with our drivers. We teach them. I have videos on how to pressure can, and then they can take it in the truck with them. But it would be really convenient if you could just buy it somewhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, him and I were working on it, and we were working on it right when COVID hit, and the supply chain fell apart, and nothing was getting done, and then we just never got back to that idea.
If you teach these truckers how to pressure can meat, they could take enough food with them for a couple of weeks, couldn't they?
Oh, a couple months, really.
Wow.
Couple months. Yeah. You know, a pint of pressure canned meat is like 2 meals for me. A pint of pressure canned meat will keep me satisfied almost for a whole day. And it's not that hard. I mean, think about it. That if I can throw 30 pints in my truck, that's really not that much space wise, and it doesn't have to be refrigerated. So yeah, they not only now are you eating what you should be eating, an animal based diet, but you control the quantity and the ingredients.
Yeah.
So one of the things we teach them how to do to make that even more nutritious is when I pressure can any meat, I top it off with bone broth.
Yeah.
And now you get the benefits of all of the benefits of bone broth as well, all the collagen, all the gelatin, all um, the nutrient dense stuff. So now not only are they taking their own food, which is a lot less expensive and much better for them, we control the nutrition, the ingredients, all of it.
We,
That's all.
as I hear you speak, it sounds almost too coincidental, but Mark Yardley, who is the owner of all these truck stops, also owns one of the largest. It's called Yardley Beef.
Oh boy.
And it's from not Scipio, but right in there, up kind of southern Utah, and
Yeah.
the finest beef in the world. And he sends me beef, and you need to be pressure canning his meat with your Let's Truck on it. This has to come together, and we need to get located in some of his stores, because getting Cardio Miracle, getting some clean, easy to eat pressure canned meat. I mean, those are good answers to these guys that need something quick but healthy and simple. Simple.
This is amazing. Of course, he should be selling his own beef in his own stores.
He sells it in one place, a Yardley Burger. When you come right out of the canyon, out of St. George, and you're going south towards California, from St. George, there's a truck stop there, and he has a Yardley Burger, and he sells all the beef in a big freezer there. But anyhow, it just dawned on me, this pressure canning and what you do, and the needs of a trucker. I just think there's a synergy there that needs to be explored.
I think so.
Anyway.
If I were a golfer, I'd say, "Why don't you invite me along?" But I'd be the caddy. I don't know.
He's the only one of his 6 siblings who doesn't play golf.
You know what? It's even a little more extreme than that. My oldest brother, I actually lost my oldest sister during COVID. My oldest brother is 15 years older than I am, and him and I were in business at one time. We ran some trucks together. He's been a golfer his whole life. Started as a caddy when he was a young kid, and then started golfing. And he has been a marshal at the Masters for like 20 some years.
What?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that's like a lifetime appointment. And he had a friend who had the position and retired 20 some years ago and gave it to him, and he still does it.
Wow.
Yeah.
I want that appointment one day.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Keith played in the Masters.
Yeah, there you go. But there does seem to be an awful lot of synergy going on here.
Well, Kevin, we have kept you so long. Yeah. I can't even tell you. And there's so much more to explore. And I think we're going to be back on your short show, and you'll hear from us, and we'll all do similar things to your listeners. And I think it'll be a blast. We can't wait to, and I'll have follow-ups for you.
I am looking forward to it. And the one thing we got to do, I know we didn't get to it today, but there's so many directions we could have gone today. When you guys are on with me, we got to get political. Come on.
Oh, I agree.
Let's
I
do it.
agree. And I think our world's about to change. That's why your power has just increased by 100-fold. I just think I'm so excited for you. I think the things you're talking about, the people you're connected with, things could really take off for Let's Truck and where you're going. So it's so exciting to have you on and be a part of maybe the infancy of the explosion for you with Cardio Miracle, with meats, with carnivore diet, with all these things that you can present to your listeners and really get them convinced, committed to following. That's why I wanted to ask you, how do you really get them? And I loved your answer. So hopefully we're on a good path.
I'm looking forward to it. It's exciting.
Kevin, really inspiring. I thought I'd done a lot of things in life, and now I know I've done nothing, and I need to read 100 books this year. No, you've inspired me to pick a topic and at least read 20 books on the topic and begin to digest information. I waste so much time. I am energetic. I don't sleep a ton. It's probably because I don't eat a lot of crap. And now that I'm going to go on the carnivore diet, I'm going to sleep less, which means I'll have more time to read and consume and be more knowledgeable. It's really been a pleasure. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Can I do one more thing since I have a new audience?
Sure.
Of course.
You just mentioned reading 20 books. And I will tell you, for anybody who is busy, and you guys are busy, I know what you do. Like you said, you've got late nights, you're energetic, you're always out doing stuff. Finding time to read is difficult. For me, this is not, I've been doing this kind of reading schedule since whenever I learned how to read, whatever grade that was, third grade, I don't remember exactly. But when I learned how to read, I became a big reader almost immediately. And for most of my childhood and growing up through my adolescent years, I read about 2 books a week. The difference back then is they were all novels. I just loved stories. I just loved to read. So I didn't really start doing the kind of self-help or business or learning kind of reading until I was in my 20s. But here's the thing, I always like to mention this. I believe wholeheartedly that our truck drivers, America's truck drivers, they're pretty important now. They should also be the most educated people in the country. And here's why. They have, do you know what the average work week is for a truck driver? It's 60 hours. That's how many hours they're allowed to drive under their hours of service. And for most drivers, it's not enough. We wish we could drive more. So most of them are driving 60 hours a week. When I drove that 1,000,000 miles, there was an audiobook playing almost the entire time. Imagine having 60 hours a week to learn that doesn't take 1 minute away from your occupation and your earning ability.
Yeah.
So true. So what a gift for them.
Yeah. And I try to remind them every time. And every time I have a new audience, I always want to make sure I get that in there. Get the audiobooks and start listening.
No, I've been doing it. Just some self-help books of recent, because I drive 4 times a week to Salt Lake and back on my way to a game and back. And I just been plugging in those books, and I'm amazed.
Yeah.
At the end of a week, I've consumed a book. I was like, that was pretty cool.
Great.
I would have never sat down and read it, in bed in my office, because you're busy. So thank you for that tip too. But I'm going to go after it now. Not just one book. I'm going to pick a topic and get after it.
Well, good. Then when we get together, we can talk about books.
I love that too. We got a lot of things to talk about. We reconvene.
That's right.
Well, thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Keith.
Thank you.
Appreciate you both so much. What a great time. Great learning. You guys have a great day.
Until the next time.
Okay. Bye-bye.